Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're unpacking a market that maybe tells us more than you'd think about transport, safety, even lifestyle trends. We're talking motorcycle helmets.
That's right. We've been digging into some detailed market analysis looking at the helmet for motorcycle lovers market. It gives us a really clear picture from 2021, looking ahead to 2025, and then projecting out to 2033.
And our mission here isn't just to, read out numbers. We want to get underneath them. What's driving this market? What's the future look like? And how does it vary, region by region?
Exactly. It's fascinating because it connects so many threads: safety concerns, the rise of two-wheelers, regulations.
It really does feel like a window into bigger global forces shaping things, even in a market that might seem kind of niche at first glance.
Absolutely. It's not just about selling gear. It links directly to, well, global safety standards getting tighter, more people using two-wheelers, especially in cities, and of course, helmet laws becoming stricter.
Okay, let's start with the big picture then. Globally, this market seems to have some real momentum. What are the sort of headline figures we're seeing?
Yeah, the trend is definitely strongly upwards. Globally, the market was valued at about $4.2 billion. That was back in 2021.
Okay.
By 2025, it had climbed to roughly $5.6 billion. And the forecast for 2033, well, it's projected to shoot past $9.7 billion.
Wow, nearly doubling the market size in what, just over a decade? That sounds like pretty robust growth, doesn't it?
It really is. The source puts the global compound annual growth rate, the CAGR, at 7.2%.
Right, CAGR. For anyone maybe not swimming in market reports daily, can you break down what that 7.2% actually means in simple terms?
Sure. Think of CAGR as like the average growth rate each year over that whole period, 2021 to 2033. It sort of smooths out the ups and downs.
Uh-huh.
So that 7.2% means on average, the market's expected to expand by about that much every year. It signals, consistent, strong growth long term.
Got it. A steady climb. So what are the main engines behind this, according to the analysis? What's pushing this global growth?
The report points to three main things. First, just a generally heightened awareness globally about rider safety. It's a bigger concern.
Makes sense.
Second, the simple increase in two-wheeler use across the world. Think urbanization, traffic, needing affordable ways to get around.
Right.
And third, countries putting in place or getting tougher on enforcing helmet regulations.
So more riders, more focus on safety, more laws.
Uh,
Yeah, that sounds like a powerful mix driving demand.
exactly.
Now, this is where I think the deep dive gets really interesting, the regional picture.
Hmm.
Because the source breaks this down, and it shows very different stories, doesn't it? Where's the biggest slice of this global market?
Oh, by far, the dominant player is the Asia-Pacific region.
Asia Pacific. Okay,
Yeah.
how dominant are we talking? What are the numbers there?
Well, it held nearly half the global market right from the start, about $1.8 billion in 2021.
Okay.
It's expected to hit around 2.4, maybe $2.5 billion by 2025. And the projection for 2033, it's huge, about $4.4 billion.
Whoa. So Asia Pacific alone in 2033 is forecast to be almost as big as the entire global market was back in 2021.
Pretty much, yeah. It's staggering growth.
And the source must highlight some key countries driving that within APAC. China, I imagine.
Absolutely central. China led the charge. It was around $760 million back in 2021, projected to climb past a billion by 2025, and then hit nearly $2 billion itself by 2033.
Incredible. And India.
Hmm.
With its massive number of two-wheelers, it must be significant too.
Definitely a key player. India's market, driven by that huge two-wheeler base, is expected to grow from just over $300 million in 2021 to nearly $800 million by 2033.
Mm.
Japan also shows strong growth, going from about $255 million to over $560 million in that same time frame.
Okay. Any other big players in the region mentioned?
Yeah, South Korea looks healthy, projected to go from around $160 million in 2021 to over $360 million by 2033. Australia, smaller market but still important, is forecast to basically double from about $76 million to over $150 million.
And the report specifically mentions Southeast Asia as a bloc, places like Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand. What's the story there?
That's a really interesting point. Southeast Asia sort of collectively shows a particularly strong CGR, 8.7%.
Higher than the global average then?
Yeah, significantly. This whole sub-region is projected to almost triple in size. It was around $148 million in 2021, expected to surge past $400 million by 2033. That high growth rate really points to developing markets rapidly adopting bikes and scooters and the helmets that go with them.
So, stepping back, why is Asia Pacific so dominant? What's the core reason?
If you connect it back to those main drivers we talked about,
Right.
Asia-Pacific's story is really about massive volume and, frankly, necessity. You have this huge reliance on two-wheelers for just basic daily transport.
Mm-hmm.
Combine that with rapid urbanization making traffic worse and governments getting better at enforcing helmet laws. It just creates this enormous demand base. It's less about weekend leisure riding, more about essential mobility for vast numbers of people.
That makes total sense. It's a different kind of market dynamic.
Mhm.
Okay, let's pivot to Europe. What does the picture look like there?
Europe is a large market, definitely established, but smaller than Asia Pacific. It was pulling in just over $1 billion in 2021.
Okay.
That's projected to climb to $1.4 billion by 2025 and then reach about $2.3 billion by 2033. Still very significant growth.
And within Europe, are there specific countries leading the way?
Germany is the leader there, forecast to break $500 million by 2033, up from around $240 million in 2021.
Right.
The UK is projected to hit over $360 million, France over $260 million, Italy heading towards $200 million, Spain over $170 million, all by 2033.
Right.
Russia is also forecast to reach over $120 million. Even smaller places like Luxembourg show steady, moderate growth.
But similar to Southeast Asia, is there a sort of collective other category in Europe showing standout growth?
Yes, exactly. The source highlights the rest of Europe. Now, it started from a smaller base, around $174 million back in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
But this segment shows the highest share globally, 9.1%. It's projected to reach over $500 million by 2033, so it's more than tripling in size.
Wow, 9.1% CMGR. That's really striking. Why might that rest of Europe be growing so much faster than, say, Germany or France? And what does this tell us about Europe's market overall, maybe compared to Asia?
Well, it highlights a key difference, I think. While Asia is driven by that sheer volume for necessity, Europe often has a bigger slice of, let's say, recreational riders, people with more disposable income, perhaps.
Right, maybe more premium helmets, features.
Exactly. The source mentions Europe's role in safety innovation. So that suggests a market focus on quality, technology, maybe higher price points. The really high growth in rest of Europe could be a few things. Maybe increasing incomes in Eastern or Southern Europe, making leisure riding more popular. Or perhaps it's newer regulations kicking in across those diverse countries, driving sales up from a lower starting point.
Interesting possibilities. Okay, let's hop across the Atlantic. North America. What's the story there?
North America is another really significant market. It's projected to get close to $2 billion by 2033. That's up from about $840 million in 2021 and over $1.1 billion in 2025.
And I assume the U.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
And over $1.1 billion in 2025.
And I assume the U.S. market is the lion's share of that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The United States makes up the bulk of it. Projected to exceed $1.2 billion, maybe $1.3 billion by 2033. That's up from around $585 million in 2021.
And what's driving that in the U.S.?
The source links it to a mix. There's the established sort of biker culture, leisure riding, but also increasingly people using motorcycles and scooters for commuting.
Right. And what about Canada and Mexico?
Canada shows good, solid growth, a TIGR of 7.9%, expected to grow from $152 million in 2021 to over $380 million by 2033.
Mm-hmm.
Mexico, though, really stands out. It has the strongest CAGR in the region at 8.5%. Its market is forecast to grow from just over $100 million in 2021 to more than $270 million by 2033.
8.5%. So Mexico's the fastest growing piece within North America. What might that difference in growth rates tell us about the dynamics there?
Well, it suggests maybe different stages of market development, right? The U.S. market is large, mature. Growth comes from established riding plus some commuter shifts. Canada, maybe similar, slightly higher growth perhaps per capita.
Okay.
Mexico's faster growth rate. That points towards a market that's maybe less mature but expanding more rapidly, likely driven more by that urbanization factor, people needing affordable transport.
Yeah.
Maybe alongside some leisure growth, too. It's like a hot spot of faster growth within the continent.
A clear pocket of opportunity, as you say. Now, the source also mentions Latin America and the Middle East and Africa, describing them as having untapped opportunities. What kind of numbers are we seeing there?
Yeah, these are definitely smaller markets compared to the big three regions, but they're showing consistent growth, which backs up that idea of opportunity.
Right.
In Latin America, Brazil is projected to reach over $220 million by 2033, up from $128 million in 2021. Argentina is set to nearly double, getting close to $100 million. Colombia is forecast to more than double to nearly $90 million Peru heading towards $42 million. Chile over $50 million. Steady growth across the board, really.
In the Middle East and Africa,
Yeah,
similar picture?
pretty similar story, yeah. Smaller base, but growing. Egypt, for example, shows a healthy 7.4% CAGR. It's projected to hit nearly $44 million by 2033, up from about $18–19 million in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Turkey is forecast to nearly double its market size to over $96 million, and the rest of Middle East categories also projected to more than double, approaching $37 million.
Okay, so let's try and pull all these threads together. We've got the global numbers, the big regional players, the high growth pockets, the emerging opportunities. What's the main takeaway when you synthesize all this data?
I think the core insight is that the motorcycle helmet market is really a multi-speed world. You've got Asia Pacific as this absolute powerhouse, driven by sheer volume, necessity, two-wheeler density, and regulations.
Right, the volume driver.
Then you have Europe and North America, large established markets. Their growth is maybe a more complex mix of leisure riding, demand for premium features, safety tech, alongside commuter use and specific local factors. And within them, you see these faster growing segments like rest of Europe and Mexico.
Okay.
And then you have Latin America and the Middle East, Africa, clearly flagged as areas with potential, showing solid growth from a smaller base.
And underpinning all of this are those global trends we started with. Safety awareness going up, the practical need for two-wheelers, especially in cities, and more regulations.
Exactly. Those forces are everywhere, but how they play out depends on the local context, the economy, the culture, the infrastructure. And looking ahead, the source does mention that innovation, new designs, bill of materials, even smart helmets will be key to keeping up this momentum through 2033.
Yeah, that innovation piece feels like the next chapter.
Yeah.
But stepping back, why does understanding the details of a market like this actually matter to, you listening right now?
Well, I think it's a great example as a sort of microcosm, right? It shows really clearly how these big global trends we hear about urbanization, safety consciousness, technology, lifestyle, changes how they actually translate into real economic activity. And it shows how those trends create very different patterns of growth depending on where you look. It highlights how interconnected things are, but also how local realities, traffic jams in Mumbai, maybe a strong biking culture in Germany, developing roads in Mexico shape specific industries.
It really does paint a vivid picture. It's a market growing not just because there are more bikes, but because the whole context of riding is shifting globally. It's driving demand for this, well, essential piece of safety gear.
Yeah.
This story isn't just numbers, it's about mobility, safety, lives changing.
Absolutely. It's robust global growth, fueled by that mix of safety rules and changing urban and lifestyle needs, but with these really distinct regional stories playing out.
So thinking about that innovation, you mentioned smart helmets, new materials. Here's maybe a final thought to leave folks with. How might that change the kind of growth we see? Will it stay mainly about selling more helmets in places like Asia Pacific? Or could the growth start shifting more towards higher value per helmet, driven by tech and features? Could that change the revenue mix, even in established markets, let alone emerging ones? What kind of growth will really define the next decade?
That's a great question. It adds another really interesting layer to watch as this market evolves.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're zooming into a really specific yet surprisingly dynamic market. Motorcycle helmets.
Right. And not just any helmets. Our source material looks specifically at what it calls the helmet for motorcycle lovers market.
That phrase, motorcycle lovers, that really jumps out.
It does. It signals this isn't just about, mandatory safety gear. It's deeply tied to identity, passion, the whole riding experience itself.
Okay.
And we've got excerpts from a fascinating report here that dives into the forces shaping this whole world.
Exactly. And our mission, as always, is to take this report, pull out the most impactful nuggets, and help you understand what's really driving this market.
The challenges, too, some unexpected ones.
Right. The challenges and where the big opportunities are popping up. It's a pretty wild blend of safety science, cultural trends, tech.
Cutting-edge tech, definitely, and global economics all mixed together.
Okay, so let's start with the big picture. The report paints a scene of rapid expansion, right?
Oh, yeah. Rapid is the word. It's clear this market is really taking off.
And the report points to three main engines kind of firing up this growth.
That's right. Big cultural shifts, increasing regulatory pressure from governments worldwide, and some significant technological leaps.
Okay, let's dig into the first one. This surge in motorcycle ownership.
Yeah, this is presented as a primary driver, and it's particularly noticeable among, younger people in emerging markets.
Where specifically?
Think countries like India, Southeast Asia, Latin America. That's where you see a lot of this growth.
And why is that such a big deal for the helmet market specifically?
Well, because in many of these places, a motorcycle isn't just, basic transportation like a car might be somewhere else. It's often a real marker of independence.
Part of a community.
Exactly. Part of a community, a lifestyle choice. It means something more.
And that mindset then spills directly into helmet demand, I guess.
Precisely. Riders there aren't just looking for any helmet. They want protection, yes, obviously, but they also want something that's a form of self-expression.
So style matters. A lot.
A huge amount. We're talking about a real hunger for bold graphics, unique branding, even things like modular add-ons to make the helmet feel like theirs.
The report gives examples, right?
Yeah.
Like local communities influencing trends.
It does. It highlights how riding communities in, say, urban Brazil or Indonesia are actively shaping demand towards helmets that are colorful, visibly branded, really stand out. It's kind of fashion meeting function head-on.
Interesting. Okay, so that's the cultural side. Shifting gears a bit, there's another major force. Governments getting stricter about safety regs.
Yeah, absolutely. You're seeing this reinforcement of helmet laws pretty much globally now.
Places like Europe, the U.S.
Europe, the U.S., Japan, too, they're all tightening up or enforcing existing laws more strictly.
And how does that ripple through the market?
Well, it creates a fundamental demand for certified helmets. These aren't just, basic plastic shells.
Right. Certified means they've passed real safety tests.
Exactly. Rigorous tests. And that often involves more advanced materials, better engineering. It pushes manufacturers to innovate not just for maximum protection, but also to make these high-quality helmets comfortable, easy to comply with.
And the report mentions consumers are actually responding to this innovation wave. They're looking for more advanced tech.
Yeah, they're gravitating towards helmets that integrate sophisticated safety tech.
Like what kind of tech are we talking about here?
Things like advanced anti-shock layers inside the helmet, to absorb impact better, reflective visors for visibility, and even smart connectivity features built right in.
Smart connectivity.
Yeah,
Okay, that sounds like it goes beyond just pure protection.
it really does. The report gives examples like riders in Germany and South Korea investing in helmets with integrated Bluetooth.
So you can talk to passengers or other riders.
Yeah, or listen to music, get directions, and also noise reduction systems, making the ride quieter, less fatiguing. It shows a clear move towards helmets becoming sort of multifunctional tools.
Enhancing the whole experience, not just keeping you safe.
Exactly. It's about the ride itself.
Okay, that leads perfectly into the third big driver the report identifies. Technological innovation itself, especially these smart helmets.
Right. These are the helmets that, felt like science fiction just a few years back.
So what features are we talking?
Features like AR heads-up displays.
Augmented reality inside the visor.
Yeah, projecting information like speed or navigation right there so your eyes stay on the road. Also, built-in cameras are becoming a thing.
For recording rides, like a dash cam for your head.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And voice command support, so you're not messing with buttons while riding.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And voice command support, so you're not messing with buttons while riding.
Okay, and who's buying these? The report points to tech-savvy riders.
It does. And primarily in developed economies. Think the United States, Japan.
Why there specifically?
Well, the context is often different. Motorcycling there isn't just about commuting. It's often a real passion, a recreational pursuit, a serious hobby.
Right. So in those places, the helmet isn't just essential safety gear anymore. It's becoming another high-tech gadget.
Part of the performance, part of the fun. It's a really fascinating evolution, how it's shifting from pure utility to integrated tech.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've seen these powerful forces driving the market forward, the culture, the rules, the tech. But like any market, it's not all smooth sailing. It faces headwinds, challenges.
Yeah, the report is pretty clear about the restraints, too.
And what's the biggest hurdle it calls out?
Cost. That's a major one. Premium helmets, especially the ones loaded with all the advanced safety or smart tech, they can get really expensive.
I can imagine. And where does the report say this price tag is a particularly significant issue?
Mainly in price-sensitive markets. So places like Mexico, Peru, parts of Africa are mentioned.
And the consequence there.
Well, the concern highlighted is that the high cost of these top-tier certified helmets can push riders towards cheaper alternatives. And those alternatives might not meet the necessary safety standards.
Yeah, that raises a really tough point, doesn't it? This idea of safety equity. if the best protection is priced out of reach?
Are regulations alone enough? It's a good question. And tied right into that is another restraint the report identifies. Just a basic lack of awareness.
Hmm. Ah, okay. Where's that an issue?
Especially in some emerging economies, the report notes that riders might prioritize, how the helmet looks or simply what they can afford right now.
Over really understanding the certifications, the materials, the actual life-saving benefits.
Exactly. The long-term value gets overshadowed by the immediate cost or the cool factor. They might not realize the difference in protection levels.
Okay, cost and awareness. What about comfort?
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
packing all this tech and safety padding in, did they get bulky?
That's definitely another challenge the report flags. Fit, weight, ventilation. These can be issues with some of the more feature-rich helmets.
And I bet that's worse in certain climates.
Absolutely. The report specifically mentions this being a problem in regions with hot and humid conditions, like India or Egypt.
So poor airflow, heavy helmet. Yeah, that must make wearing it consistently, especially on long rides, pretty unpleasant.
It can be a real deterrent. The report suggests that consumers in these hotter climates might actually choose lighter, more breathable helmets, even if it means giving up features like integrated comms or cameras.
Because comfort is just non-negotiable for actually using it.
Right. If it's too uncomfortable, people just won't wear it or won't wear it properly, which defeats the whole purpose.
Okay, so we've navigated the drivers and the real-world challenges. Let's pivot now to some of the more exciting trends and opportunities the report highlights. Where's the market finding new growth?
Well, one of the most prominent trends is something we touched on earlier: personalization and customization. It's really taking hold.
So it's moving beyond just a niche thing. It's a major trend now.
Seems like it. Riders genuinely want unique helmets. Things that reflect their individual identity, maybe show off brand affiliations or feature symbols important to their riding group.
That sounds like it would thrive in places with a strong bike culture.
Exactly. The report points to places like Italy and Japan, where the bike and gear are really seen as extensions of the rider's personality. Deep, established motorcycle cultures.
And how is the market responding to this demand?
We're seeing the rise of boutique brands. They're offering limited editions, bespoke artwork.
Really unique stuff.
Yeah. And they're finding success often through online platforms like Instagram and especially direct-to-consumer websites, DTC.
DTTC, meaning they sell straight to the customer online.
Exactly. Cutting out the traditional retail middleman, it lets them connect directly with riders looking for something special.
Okay, interesting. Let's unpack another trend the report mentions: sustainability. That seems to be cropping up everywhere.
It is, and it's gaining traction in the helmet market too, especially with a certain segment of consumers. Brands are starting to launch eco-friendly helmets.
Oh, are they doing that? Different materials?
Yeah, exploring things like recycled or biodegradable materials for certain helmet components.
And where is this catching on?
The report notes it's gaining favor with environmentally conscious consumers, particularly in places like Western Europe and urban centers in the U.S.
So for those buyers, it's not just safety anymore, it's safety plus environmental impact.
Right. It adds another layer to the purchase decision. It's a powerful combination for that group.
And finally, you mentioned online platforms and DTC. The report sees this as a major shift.
Oh, absolutely. The rise of e-commerce and these direct channels is seen as like a revolution in how helmets are actually sold.
Well, it makes sense. As a buyer, you suddenly get access to global brands. You can read tons of reviews, compare features easily.
It's a huge amount of information and choice right at your fingertips.
And the report connects this to accessibility.
Yeah, it points out this is particularly impactful in countries maybe like Australia or Canada. You might have riders in remote areas who previously had very limited local options for premium or specialized helmets.
E-commerce just blows that wide open for them.
Exactly. It opens up the global marketplace.
Okay, so bringing it all together then, how does the report wrap things up? What's the overall conclusion on the state of this helmet for motorcycle lovers market?
The source concludes that it's firmly on a robust upward trajectory, definitely growing.
Fueled mostly by those key drivers we talked about.
Yeah.
More riders globally, that growing emphasis on safety and regulations and all the tech advancements.
Right. While still acknowledging those immediate challenges, the cost issues, making sure people are aware of safety standards.
But the long-term picture looks strong. driven by those trends like customization.
Customization, yeah, the move towards greener materials and the sheer power of e-commerce and selling directly to consumers.
So the final outlook from the report is pretty positive then.
Very positive. The expectation is that as regulations keep tightening and writing culture gets more connected and individualized,
Yeah.
this market isn't just going to grow in volume.
It'll evolve too.
Exactly. It's expected to evolve significantly in terms of value, the diversity of styles, the level of tech sophistication, becoming an even more vital and, frankly, dynamic part of the whole mobility landscape.
That really paints a picture of a market that's way more complex and interesting than just, protective headwear.
For sure.
Understanding these forces, the culture, the laws, the tech, sustainability, it gives you a much richer perspective on something you might just see riders wearing every day.
It absolutely does. It's a fascinating intersection.
Okay, so that leaves us with maybe one final thought from this deep dive for you to chew on. Given that clear tension the report identifies, the tension between the often high cost of the really advanced safety-certified helmets
Right, the top-tier stuff.
and the crucial need for affordability and education in those fast-growing but maybe more price-sensitive regions, how is the global market actually going to navigate that? How can it balance pushing innovation forward while also making sure that top-tier safety becomes truly accessible for all riders everywhere?
That's the big question, isn't it? Balancing progress with access.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.